The dream is that we design curriculums and plans, lesson plans around movement and say, right, we need to learn this. How can we build movement into that learning? Or how can we, give flexibility to how we move to learn this particular thing? And if you're a creative teacher, which generally a lot of people are, you can do that quite easily, and you can behave like that yourself too. I think you've just got to practice it.
In this episode, I'm joined by former primary teacher turned movement educator and founder of Raw Movement, Clare Rawlings, to explore why so many teachers are living with daily aches and pains and what can be done about it. Clare shares her personal story of doing all the right exercise but still feeling terrible in her body, and how a shift in understanding transformed the way she moved and felt. We dive into why so many teachers are stuck in a cycle of injury and repair, how movement habits are formed early in life, and why schools and workplaces need to embrace a new kind of movement education. Clare also shares simple, practical steps for making movement part of the day, not something separate from it. Clare, you worked as a primary school teacher in Hong Kong. When was that?
That was quite a long time ago. That was in 2003 to about 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at that point, you started to have some issues with your movement. Is that fair to say, in health?
Yeah, for quite some time, I'd say. Actually, before that time, I used to exercise quite a lot because I'm the kind of person that reads all this stuff about having to exercise for X amount of time in so many ways a week. And yeah, before that, I had really painful pelvis and hip joint. And I used to run a lot as well then. I used to run in Hong Kong in this down this lovely road above all the flats and apartments. It was lovely. But at that time, yeah, I was in a lot of pain and I couldn't really work out what was wrong with me or understand what was causing that pain. And so, yeah, my journey into understanding my body actually started much later, but it was accumulating at that point, and I was starting to think, okay, what's wrong with me? I'm only 30 or whatever. Is this going to be? Is this how you're meant to live? Is this how you're meant to feel every day? So yeah, teaching emphasized it more because of course you stand on your feet all day, and also in Hong Kong you wear footwear because it's so warm most of the year. Ended up wearing flip-floppy type shoes. Which at that time I had no clue about footwear, so I used to wear flip-floppy sort of sandally type things to work, and I wasn't aware of how feet affect how you move, and also the trainers I wore as well, so yeah.
And where did you notice sort of similar complaints in other teacher colleagues?
Yeah. I mean, teachers are always achy, I think, and always experience pain. I don't think I've ever met a teacher who's not in pain or can't tell me that they've got X, Y, Z going on and they've been to see a physio and a chiro, and they're in that kind of cycle of constant injury and repair. So yeah.
And yet a lot of people would probably think, well, it's actually a lot more active a job than a desk job, and we're all told so much about how sedentarism and sitting at a desk all day long is so
Yeah.
much worse. Not that you're comparing the two literally, but often people will sort of make assumptions about more active roles that actually, well, that's going to be better for you. But
Yeah. Well, I think it's two extremes, isn't it? That there's a one extreme where you sit on your bum all day. And then the other side of that is that you have a job where you move in the same way repeatedly all day. And I think teaching comes into that. You have to navigate stairs. You have to, you're writing on the board. You're bending over desks. It's
yeah.
all the same moves every day. And so of course your body starts to try to communicate with you and tell you that this isn't right for me. So
And so
yeah.
so you then left Hong Kong, is that right?
Oh yeah. So yeah, we've travelled quite a lot. So we then lived in Australia where I had two kids. So my kids were born there. Met a wonderful friend in the park one day. Gaynor Armstrong, who runs a PT. She's got her own business in Sydney. She became a friend of mine, joined her PT class. We went on a journey together because we both had kids of the same age. I did a master's then in teaching with the intention of our next move. I would have the more qualifications to teach. When I was in Hong Kong, I did a Cambridge qualification to teach English. So I spent a bit of time training with Gaynor, and it was actually Gaynor who introduced me to Katie Bowman's books, because we both had problems at that time with with our pelvic floors, and we were looking for the answer. But it wasn't until years later that I was back in the UK that Gaynor actually showed me those books, and she said, "Look, Claire, I've completely changed how I PT train now because of these books, and they've been such a great tool." And so then I started to learn. So I went on her sort of journey. And at that time, so I was back in the UK, it was 2016. I was doing a boot camp 3 days a week. My body was absolutely messed up by this time, absolutely in a mess. I would go and train, and I would think I was moving in the right way, but actually I was wrecked.
Yeah.
And I was very sad as well and low, because you just think,
Yeah.
gosh, I'm doing everything that you're meant to do, but I just feel awful. So yeah. And so that's when I started to train as a PT, because I thought that's the way to access people and share my knowledge and how I'd transformed how I move then. So yeah.
And so you've skipped forward from the boot camps to, so then what was the process that you went through to re-educate yourself and sort of repair yourself and get yourself out of pain? Was that purely through Katie's work, amazing work, and just working through it, or did you do more than that?
No, a variety of things, really. I was working in a gym, observing people. I was working with a group of ladies who had asked me to take over their yoga class, but I told them that I wasn't really a yoga instructor and it was going to be a bit different. And so and so they're still with me today. They're just
There
an
you go.
amazing group, and I love them all. And yeah, it's just been a long path to where I am. But then one day I just thought to myself, back to my teaching years, is teachers and people just have an absolute lack of understanding of how to do the basics of how to stand and sit and move. And I was, so then 2018, I think, no, 2020, I started a postgrad course in health and well-being in the workplace, and I'm just on the final part now. But that absolutely opened my eyes to research around pain in the workplace, and specifically teachers, and how to design interventions that work, because lots of workplaces put in like a bowl of fruit or a yoga class or a Pilates class or something, and they're just useless, really. Then they don't capture many people, and they only normally capture the people who are into that stuff anyway. And if you think about the workplace, you have a responsibility and also an opportunity to change health outcomes for people.
Yeah.
And so I started to think, well, that is the place then to start to move people in a good way. And so that's where raw movement kind of evolved. And yeah, just teaching people like what to wear on your feet,
So
how
well,
to
let's start
stand.
there then, because so
Yeah,
we've talked for teachers. Let's hone in a bit more specifically on teachers, because
yeah,
I think they're a really good example even for non-teachers, just because
yeah,
of the fact that they are doing repeated things. And there's lots of people who aren't even working, who are around the home, but again are using, not necessarily very sedentary, but are using the same repeated patterns. They may be exercising really well, going to yoga, Pilates, might be a great walker, doing lots of things that, as you say,
yeah,
and I've certainly, succumbed to in the past, thinking, well, I am ticking all the boxes that I'm told I need to tick. What more can I do? And actually, the answer isn't ever about necessarily, particularly for that active person, what more can I do? The answer is, what way can I do it
yeah,
differently?
yeah,
So let's take the example of a teacher then. So starting with what they're stood on, their feet.
yeah.
Why do you feel that that footwear piece is so important?
Because the feet tell the body how to move, and unfortunately, up until recently, humans are only able to access footwear that has been designed to be fashionable or sexy or make your feet look small and petite. And I think they are responsible for an awful lot of pain. And I think nobody, including teachers, really understands how to choose footwear, and also where to find it,
Yeah.
where to find good shoes, because even when you think about when you go to I don't know, Clark's or somewhere to get a shoe, when you shod a kid, shod your,
Mm.
I mean, the shoes that they have been making for 100 years or however long are really poor when it comes to the mechanics of a foot. And I never realized that for my kids. And I feel
Mm.
awful sometimes that I've saying, oh, come and get these shoes, they're so
But it
good. And
but it wasn't
mm,
just us though, obviously it's what's available in the first place, but it was
Yeah, yeah,
also
sure.
then when you get to school and they say things like, you have to wear shoes that can be polished. That one I was always like, but hang on, the ones that have to be polished are so narrow at the front,
Yeah.
really restrictive, hard leather, really
Yeah.
expensive.
Or now
um,
if you go to a school where they let you wear those Nike, what they're called,
yeah,
my
Air
son,
Max or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Air Max things. I mean, they don't even bend. Those things
no,
don't,
and the
and yet your foot
sole.
does.
Exactly, and the soles are so actually, a slight segue. So we went to go
Mm.
and get some trainers for my son, and we were looking for the thinnest and the flattest sole that we could find. And in the, I don't know, 6 months since his feet have grown, the fashion now has gone so much into this massive, thick, but really high heeled trainer sole, way more so
Mm,
than even 6 months ago, that we
yeah,
pretty much couldn't find anything. We had to come home and go online. And that
yeah,
that amazed me that even the old um Converse, nothing like that even exists. And Converse
yeah,
wasn't great for some reasons, but at least it was flat
yeah,
and moved a bit. So yeah,
yeah,
so the restrictions, obviously, with footwear there are that to are the body's mechanics require the foot to splay at the front, and when it's tight,
yeah,
it can't. When you've got a heel, particularly in the teacher's example, they're stood all day, but they're tipped forward, so their whole body
yeah,
is straining to hold them upwise. So is that then what you're meaning by the sort of cause of pain up the chain from the feet,
yeah, yeah.
presumably?
Yeah, definitely. And then it's combined with the fact that, we learn how to move from the people around us. And at the moment, if you look around, everybody's got their heads down in a phone. And so children are learning now that
Mm.
posture is the correct posture. And of course, it's wrecking bodies. It's dangerous, I think. And I think, we're going to end up with children, young adults that are in a lot of pain. I think we already see that in a lot of the research now that is coming out, and there's not really any answers that are sustainable and that change the culture of how we move. And that's why my work in schools is
Yeah.
just so important, that we can actually give the teachers the skills first, because that's what I do. We go into the school and we make them aware of how they can improve, what they wear on their feet, and then we look at how they stand. And so people, develop ways to stand from the people around them, or because they're in pain and they can't
Mm.
stand on a foot so much or a knee so much. And we we look at how they move around school, and then we give them some moves or things to incorporate into their day without getting changed into lycra and having to move weights, which is the normal sort of rhetoric around movement, isn't it? So just, and
So
what I love to do as well is sort of teach teachers how to teach through movement as well, because we now have all these neurodiverse kids that just crave
yeah.
being able to move. And the way that we've taught for years and years and years now is to sit. And I really think it's the cause of a lot of problems, is that we train them to sit, and the ones that can sit for the longest, they do the best in school. I mean, my son is a fine example. He's as bright as a button, but has ADHD now. But all it is that he can't sit still for 5 minutes. It's really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's not set up that. I do remember one of my favorite the teachers of one of my kids who taught a very boring subject. Sorry, I won't say because I don't want to offend all the teachers who teach that subject, but it was very boring. And he knew that it was seen as boring, but he
yeah,
was also quite progressive. So when he could see the energy of the
mm,
classroom go down, as it would,
yeah,
yawns, the sort of leaning on the hands on the side of the desk, he would say, right, up, out, sprints round the playground, back to the thing, who's quickest, do them a little time thing. But
yeah,
before they left, he would always say, right, we're going to recount these 5 things or whatever, learn this thing. And he knew that actually when they were out running, even though they weren't actively thinking about that, when they came back in and sort of tested on it or did another part of that exercise,
yeah,
they always did better because they'd
yeah,
moved and their brain had been able to absorb it because they'd been moving. And then they had a beneficial second half of the lesson rather than a sort of a slump. And I kind of always think
yeah,
it's the same with adults in meetings. And, you know,
yeah,
we should have short meetings so that we don't
yeah.
lose the track and so on. So tell me a bit more about the kinds of things that you would say to teachers to do that would be helpful
For themselves.
for themselves, about the way
Yeah,
that the sort of, so that the movement little extras that you would put in and encourage them to do.
yeah, yeah. So I absolutely think it's fundamental that teachers need to learn how to bend, because most teachers I observe, they reach over a desk to help somebody and they have no idea how to use their pelvis to bend. And so that's really important. I even went to see a consultant on Wednesday, and he was bending over the desk to write some notes. And I
Did
was
you say something?
talking, well, yeah, I did. He already knew what I did. And he said to me when he saw me again, he said, "Oh, my back's still killing." And I said to him, "Well, I can tell you why." I said, "Because you need to bend a bit. You need to bend from the pelvis, pull your hips." And he just didn't get it. And he's, and I think there is a sheer lack of understanding of your pelvis and how it works. I'm not saying that you need to know every muscle and bone and everything. You just need to know the basics of how it bends and how to use that bend day to day to prevent back pain. So there's that. I think getting up and down off the floor for primary school teachers, diversifying how you get up off the floor. Don't always use the same leg,
Yeah.
swap legs. Find about 30 ways to get up off the floor, and then use them and rotate through them.
Yeah.
Reaching up and using arms. I mean, if we think about the world that we live in now, we don't really use our arms as much as we need to maintain a good functioning core. I think lots of people don't understand that shoulders have to move because they are quite complex and they need small moves and big moves. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to learn, but what I find is that just a few basic big. So if I use the calf stretch, which you know about, I mean, that really unlocks a lot of problems to begin with. So I kind of focus on showing them the moves that I think will change their body the easiest and in a quick way, so that then they've formed a foundation then for then thinking more deeply about what other ways they can move as well. And then we look at the classroom and we look at where we put things in the classroom. We look at how you walk around school. Yeah, it's really interesting. I love it.
And tell me then, how do teachers respond well to that? And have you sort of had some stories of change?
Yeah. I think at first it's quite an alien concept. I mean, for the for most people, they're set in their ways and they like to tell a story of, oh, my physio this says this and my chiro says that. And I always try to then sort of work on them and say, well, it's your body. It talks to you constantly. Take the time to um, find what you need, find what your body needs, and observe how you move.
And I think that observation piece is really important, because when you're not aware, you're not aware. And you're questioning it, like you're saying, from a really outside perspective. It's really, you're being really objective, but you're using the lens of the professionals. You've just listed professionals that you hope will give you the solution and the answer. But often those solutions and answers are about the thing, because you go with the thing. I have shoulder problems. I'm a teacher. I'm always writing on the board. It really hurts. We
Yeah.
don't think about how we're doing that. But they rarely talk about, well, what's your whole package? How are you
Yeah.
moving all day long? What's happening, as we talked about, as you started the conversation off, what's happening with your feet and what you're wearing on your feet? Yes, I've come in about my shoulder, but the reality is we are one big organism that sings like a beautiful harmony if we allow it to all work together. But when we are restrictive, or as you said before, we're in these repeated patterns, then we get stuck, don't we? We get stuck and we can't see in. Just taking a quick pause because I want to tell you about a new offer exclusively for listeners of this podcast. If you'd like to improve your mobility, strength, and learn more about moving well in daily life now and to train for your 90s, come and move with me in the Reclaim Movement membership. There's weekly live coaching in term time with hundreds of replays available, as well as hordes of 5 and 10-minute mini movement videos to follow throughout your day. I'm offering you a 15% discount on your first month's membership on top of the 7-day free trial. Go to reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to create your account and quote the code podcast15. Let's move together to feel better and keep doing all the things you love. The issue is translating. I think sometimes it's quite hard to say, listen to what your body's saying, because without that foundational understanding of how the whole way you move all day long and the bits that you need, the sort of, as Katie Bowman would put it, the nutrients that you need, both macro and micro, every day to keep everything working and oiled and lovely, they don't have that knowledge. That knowledge isn't around, is it? So,
No.
but also, as you said, not everyone wants to know in depth. I certainly don't have massively in-depth musculoskeletal knowledge. I've done an anatomy and physiology qualification, but and I passed it very well. But at the same time, it's like another language that I don't need to use all the time.
No.
But what you're doing is, obviously, you're going into these classes to the teachers, and you're giving them a shift in mindset, shift in viewpoint on what movement actually is and why it's so important. Where I think, like you were saying before, you're not lycra and weights. Movement has been sort of relegated, lost, forgotten, compared to the big piece exercise, the this is how you're going to be healthy. But you can't exercise if your body's falling apart, quite frankly.
No. And you see a lot of people do. So I have helped a local running club, and the things I told them, they went completely against what they've known for many years and what they
Really?
sign up for. I mean, one person had awful bunions on their feet, and I felt really sad for them, because they just not because it was because of running, but they just had the wrong shoes on their feet for years and years, and now it was impacting the pain in their feet. And I think it's important. So I've developed this course, this movement foundation course, which is just in 5 minutes. It's 4 modules, 5-minute blocks, and it sort of talks people through all these things, how to stand and sit. I mean, that's another story, is how to sit. So a lot of teachers are at a screen all the time. When you go into schools, they love to show you their ergonomic chair, which always makes me laugh. And I don't want to discredit the ergonomics industry, but it does make me laugh sometimes, because people assume that once you've got an ergonomic chair that your body sits well, and it doesn't. And so people have these cumbersome, bulky chairs. I remember I worked
on
with
wheels
somebody.
as well.
I know, on wheels, and like a head thing, like Star Trek, like a seat out of Star Trek, like a spaceship, and they're very protective of them as well.
Yeah.
When I worked at the Home Office, somebody had one, and they wrote on the back, "Please leave this chair here. I need this. It's life-saving," which it is for some people. Let's not forget that, who would otherwise not be at work. But
yeah,
so
but it doesn't always solve the pain, does it? That's the thing.
No, and it comes back to the pelvis. I mean, people just never get shown or taught all the time to feel themselves what the pelvis does and where to position it when you sit.
So let's talk a bit about that, because it's really, really interesting for people. And you talked at the beginning of the conversation about pelvic floor dysfunction, and that was kind of one of your journeys into this whole thing, really. And so many people struggle with pelvic floor dysfunction, and in fact, I was talking about it this very week on a cold water swim with a friend, and often, and she, I hope she wouldn't mind me saying, I'm sure she wouldn't, she was saying, but I do my Kegels every day. I'm tightening, I'm doing the tightening exercises every day. And I think I want to ask you your opinion on it, but when a pelvis is tipped back regularly for long periods in a chair, you're chronically tightening the pelvic floor. So to then go and do Kegels that tighten it further, you're not going to find a solution, are you? It's actually the opposite. No. It's opening out. So what was your sort of discovery around pelvic floor, and what the common problem is, especially with regards to sitting?
Well, I just think people don't understand how to sit properly, and you're right. I don't think I ever see, when I'm out and about, anybody sit on a bench or a curb or anything, sit on their sit bones with their pubic bone pointed down. They just don't understand about the bowl. And I just my journey was a long one, and I still wouldn't say it's perfect. I think you have to work on it from a whole body, especially your arms. And I never realized how using your arms was so impactful on your core strength and your pelvic floor. So I wouldn't say I'm out of the woods. I don't think anybody is. And I think as we age, it's important that we do diversify how we move, and we take time to do some stretching, and we sort of find the areas of your body that are quite tight or weak, and work on them. And that's what I like to do with people. So for example, at the moment, I'm helping a lovely lady who used to swim lots, and she's got beautiful shoulders, strong shoulders, upper body, but her pelvis is just so weak, and her glute strength, so her bum's not very big and strong. And I've been helping her to incorporate bum strengthening, muscle strengthening stuff into her whole day, instead of going and saying to her, right, go and do squats in the gym, because that doesn't work really. And she has a child that's 2, so she's got no time at all. So I just was showing her how to sit better for a start off, because she was tucking her leg under her bum every day, so she was really tucked. And then, and then thinking about how can you move all day in ways that promote strength, because the other thing that drives me insane is that we're told, especially as we get older, that we need to do weights and stuff. But I think if you're aligned well and you understand how to move, your body is an automatic weight. So learning to engage it in the right way to do the right moves, so how you stand up and sit down,
and
really matters.
and getting to the floor, because
Yeah.
your entire body weight resisted, resisting gravity to go down so that you don't slump and fall,
Yeah.
and then pushing all the way back up. That's a real sort of indicator, isn't it,
Yeah.
of your strength? But it's also a way of strengthening just by doing it. So having those
Yeah.
a lot of people sort of, I can, see the eyeballs rolling a bit, because they're like, well, why would I sit on the floor if I've got a chair to sit
Oh
on?
yeah.
And obviously, yes, I get that. It makes sense. But you're missing this hugely important strengthening opportunity, that
Yeah.
if you want to play on the ground with your grandkids, when you're older, and then want to be able to get up off the ground, you're at a picnic
Yeah.
and you want to be able to get up without someone having to pull you up,
Yeah.
then that's the best exercise, in inverted commas, that you
Yeah.
can do, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we go back to schools. So the chair is just a significant part of school. I just commented on a LinkedIn post about, this fancy school somewhere that had been designed, and it would look beautiful, bright, gorgeous colours, but there are chairs of the same height everywhere. And I was like, thinking about children and the way that they move, they thrive on movement, and then you're sort of you're forcing them into the chair, aren't you? And then life is all about, where is my next seat? Uh,
Yes.
you go in the dentist and you find the chair, and somebody says, "Oh, do you want a seat?" I'm like, "No, thanks."
Yeah.
But that's how the mentality grows from schooling. Yet if you look at a nursery school, there shouldn't be any seats, because
No,
kids sit on the floor. They love to play games on the floor. They crouch, they stoop,
they
they
squat.
they squat. Yeah, I mean, but by the time that they're 5, they can't even squat anymore, which is super sad to me.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. And I don't know what age it is that they no longer sit on the floor, but I remember being in assembly,
mm,
sitting in those long lines based on your
mm,
form. But it was good. We were sitting on the
yeah,
floor, and also circle time, where in primary
mm,
school, where you would sit and listen to a story or whatever, and you'd be allowed to wriggle around all over. That was a really lovely wriggle time. But
yeah,
then that seems to have gone, really much
yeah.
earlier. And again, so what other opportunities apart from PE, and not necessarily even them, are they even being on the floor at all?
Well, yeah, and then there's the issue of like PE and games. I mean, for our era, it was cross country in the bloody snow in a pair of big knickers. It was awful, you know. It was really awful.
It was off-putting, yeah, that is for sure.
Yeah, and you get traumatized for life. So now we have a world where the successful people are the ones that can sit for the longest, and they're also, in general, the same people that played the sport. And that's why we've got all these schools now that are focused on sport and team. And but what about all the poor
The
buggers
rest.
who don't fancy that, who would still enjoy moving in
Moving.
their own way, or being in an environment that is naturally moving them? I mean, I just think there's this huge gap, and and my work is focused around that. Like the
So
95% of people who don't engage with PE and games, what skills are we giving them to maintain their physical well-being when they leave
So
school?
what would you advise? Because you also do talk to schools, don't you, about movement, not just the health of the well-being of their teachers, but also in educating schools about, as you've said, I can't remember if you said in this conversation, but movement literacy, which is a great way of putting it because it's so very much in the education speak.
Yeah.
So what do you say to school? What ideas do you give them or suggestions do you make to help movement be more integrated into their days?
Yeah, I think, I work with them on the environment. So making sure that the environment suits the bodies, and making sure that when they get things out of cupboards, they're reaching for them, put things up high. Let's not make everything convenient. Let's actually move ourselves while we do stuff, and creating classrooms where there is flexibility in learning space, and it's not all chair based, because you don't need to sit at a desk to write. And if you think about when you lie on your front and then you're turning over on your side, I mean, I talk, it's quite alien for most schools, because they do have the behavioral
Yeah.
issues. And you know the comment of like, sit down and be quiet and stuff, I mean, that still exists, doesn't it, in a lot of schools. But a lot of international schools overseas, I'm finding, are more receptive to these ideas. So yeah. And then putting things on the wall, so as you move around a school, can people have a little climb? Can you put some climbing things on the wall? Can you put like a bell up for people to reach? And just things
Yeah.
to that are fun, that people that the kids will move more, and creating a classroom where footwear is outside, out of the window. Get your feet out,
Mm. And what I like about those ideas and suggestions as well is that it's in their daily lives, because they spend many more hours in the classroom than they do in the playground. And I think sometimes the quick fix is right, well, we'll put some play equipment up that,
Mm,
that they can climb on. But that's for such a small moment of the day.
yeah,
It's a bit like the adults with the exercise piece being, well, I've done my X minutes of exercise today at the gym. So the rest of
yeah,
the time, I don't need to think about it. And yet I'm still in pain. And it's the same with the kids. It's getting them to
yeah.
be used to moving. But then that does then translate forward to the office, doesn't it? And
Oh yeah.
they come out of school and they've done whatever they have or haven't. But then we get often stuck in offices, and you also go into offices as well, don't you, to
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about creating a better movement environment. What sort of suggestions do you make there?
um Well, there's two types of workplace, really. There's those that are receptive and quite funky and are interested in being a bit out there. And there's those places that tick the box. So one example is an office space that just invested hundreds of thousands of pounds in standing desks, which is fantastic, because we know that if you sit stand all day, that you use up 20% more calories, you grow strength and stuff. But actually the staff hadn't been taught to use them correctly, and so it just ends up being the cool dude that cycles in every day that then stands up all day.
But then
But
that's
actually the
not a
people,
solution
yeah,
either, is it? You don't
I
want him
know,
standing all day.
I
It's
know.
got to be the variety. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. But if you want to change the health outcomes of the people that work with you,
Yeah.
um, you need to give them the skills to use these things, which I think they're fantastic standing desks. But at the same time, people need guidance. They need to see leaders around them using them,
Yeah.
key champions, as they call them in the office.
Mm.
You know, and it needs to be built around a culture of movement as
Yes.
well in the workplace, and that takes time.
Yeah,
And
because people
yeah,
don't necessarily want to be the one that stands out
no,
as abnormal. And uh, someone said to me that they'd been into a business that was really open. They had invested in the standing desk, but on one floor they went in and no one was using them. They all had them. And then they went into the next floor and everyone was using them. And it was really apparent that it was sort of
yeah,
acceptable, seen as acceptable in one and not so much in the other one.
yeah,
And yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, of course. And people
yeah,
don't like to be seen as doing something different
yeah,
or to stand out as different. And yet
yeah,
often standing out as different is the best thing that you can do.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
just make it, as long as it's about your priority, about what works for you. And if you found
yeah,
that sort of sitting, standing and having that variety works, then
yeah,
yeah, it's the
yeah.
most important thing.
And then if you've learned that at school, it's
Mm.
even better, because the kids who are coming into the workplace then,
Yeah,
they automatically do that, and their behavior is such that that's their norm then. So
yeah,
that's what we want to get to, is the place where a kid comes into a new office, and if it's all desks that are just boring old desks, they're going to say, well, I don't want to work here. I want
yeah.
a movement rich place to work, because that's
Yeah.
how I work best.
What a great vision, wouldn't it be to that
Yeah.
businesses would sell themselves on the fact that, come and work here because we are, all the other
Yeah.
boxes you have to tick, and we're a movement rich office.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. And it would
yeah,
be so much easier for people to be able to just be themselves. And I do feel that even though we feel like we want to sit all day, I think often our brains and our bodies are screaming to actually
yeah,
have more movement and adapt and so on, because and you feel so much better when you do. But when you forget how that feels, then you
yeah,
get used to a lower level norm, don't you? And you're sort of
yeah,
living suboptimally.
yeah. Well, you get trained from the age of 4 or 5, you see, and so when you get to 20, you're well into it and you're well fixed.
So the work that you're doing by going into schools and offices, but particularly by going into schools, is great, as you say, because if nothing else, you are creating awareness amongst both teachers and pupils that
Yeah,
just moving more and more differently,
yeah,
it can make you feel good, and that
yeah,
it's allowed, that it's a good thing, it's something to
yeah,
embrace,
yeah,
rather than, as you say, that whole old adage of sit still, be quiet, uh,
yeah.
kind of thing.
Uh, And the curriculum, I mean, the dream is that we design curriculums and plans, lesson plans around movement, and say, right, we need to learn this. How can we build movement into that learning? Or how can we, give flexibility to how we move to learn this particular thing? And,
Yeah,
and if you're a creative teacher, which generally a lot of people are, you can do that quite easily, and you can behave like that yourself too. I think
yeah,
you've just got to practice it and
exactly.
break
And
out
then
of the mold.
break out and modeling it not only benefits those you're modeling it for, but your own body at the
Yeah,
same time. You're going to feel
yeah,
better yourself. Well, it's
yeah.
what amazing work you're doing. So have you got any, so you talked about this, your course, is that available yet?
Yes, my course is available online, and it's £50, which is a reasonable price. Um, and that's for access to all the videos and a guide, and some PDFs on topics and stuff. Yeah, and then some help from me too. So I wanted to make it accessible to as many
Yeah.
people as possible. So that. that's that. And then I'm working, just about to start some work with some schools in Hong Kong, delivering some workshops for teachers. It's like phase 2 of a program. I've been working alongside them for about two years now, and we're on to phase 2 starting in September. Going to do an online course every week for teachers to learn all this stuff, and then they'll be given access to my course too, and some help. So I'm really excited about that, because
and I can see
it
that
just
would be
takes
needed
time.
here. Well, exactly. They take a lot of time to build,
Yeah,
but I think that would be hugely appealing here as well.
Yeah, I would love to do this work here, and I try so hard, but schools don't have funding, or it's just it's hard to find schools, because their priority at the moment, I feel, is mental health. So all the programs that they roll out, but they're forgetting that physical and mental go together. So I think eventually they're going to be calling on this kind of work to complement the mental health work that they've been doing.
Brilliant. And then you'll be there ready.
I'll be ready and waiting, with my team of people to go across the country in all the schools to share this vital information.
Exactly.
What's the lady's name? Bridget, the education lead in the government. If anybody knows her,
get her in touch. All Clare's details will be in the show notes. Get in touch. Absolutely. Well, listen, I think the work you're doing is amazing. Obviously, completely singing the same tune, because we're both big movement advocates, and it's always so lovely to speak to someone who literally is on the same page, but you're doing such valuable work for schools, workplaces, and local people as well.
And I think it's important to credit Katie Bowman. Like I'm so glad I found her work, because I think I would be in a right mess now if I hadn't. But then it sort of instilled such a passion in me that I'm really thankful for what she does.
And I'm exactly the same. She literally was pivotal in what I do now, and working out what happened with my own body, which I really couldn't have worked out without her. And what's lovely is that we then go off and we spread that word. And I think both of us feel so passionate that it's really important that people know this, particularly as the world modernizes more and more, as the technological generation progresses more and more, it's even more vital. And you're right. I think, yes, there is a big focus on mental health, but that's hugely affected by a big piece of why mental health is such in crisis in so many areas, is because physical health we're not moving enough, and we're not moving in the right ways. And so therefore, it will come together. I totally agree. It will become one thing. We will get there.
Hopefully we're still alive.
Yes, we're alive to see it. Yes, exactly.
I know.
Thank you so much.
Sometimes I wish I'd found this when I was 20. I'd have more time to...
Well, but then potentially if we had, we would have adopted it in our own lives, been better off ourselves, talked to a few people about it, but not necessarily been doing the purposeful work that you certainly are doing, and that I hope I'm doing as well. So
thank you. Thanks for inviting me on this podcast. It's been really
lovely talking to you, and thank you for your time. And anyone for whom this resonates, get in touch with Clare. All right, take care.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.